They did it to Jameis, they did it to Kirk, and this week, Jesse Minter's group will have to bring out the bad version of Baker Mayfield because once he starts turning the ball over, they come in bunches.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, Baker Mayfield is a gunslinger. He likes to go out there and cut it loose, and he's had some success. 28 touchdowns, but he has also thrown 13 interceptions. So he will put the ball in harm's way. It's up to the Chargers defense to go take that football away and give it back to Justin Herbert. And then on offense, it's all about protecting Justin Herbert from the monsters in the middle. Do not let them wreck the game, because they definitely can. And of course, as always, we got to wrap it up with our bold and game predictions.
Yeah, and this is a game, that's going to be a very tough game for the Chargers, but if they're able to pull it off, it's going to go a long way as far as their playoff probabilities. But you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. David, in certain games, we want to start with the defensive side of things because it is the biggest key to the game. And although we have plenty that the Chargers offense needs to do in this game to hopefully keep pace with a very high-scoring Buccaneers defense like we talked about yesterday, this is our offense. This is a huge test. The Chargers defense in games like this haven't been able to slow down the top offenses they played, like the Cincinnati's or the Baltimore Ravens. But this is a little bit of a bipolar offense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it can get a little wild, and that gunslinger mentality can show up in good ways and bad ways. And I think for this game specifically, it's just getting that first turnover from Baker and having him start to press from there, because that is something that he will do. And I got this little note from Locked On Bucs host James Yarko, who said Baker Mayfield has more games with multiple interceptions than he has with a single interception in his career. And David, when you add the amount of interceptions, it has been feast or famine, right? 5 out of the last 8 games, he's had multiple interceptions. In the 3 games he didn't, he had 0. So, if you can get that one, chances are you're going to get another one, and things can kind of unravel from there.
And the way that you can help get those interceptions, get those turnovers, for me, from watching the games, is making Baker double clutch. Make him pat the ball a couple of times, make him not be able to hit his first read, and then he starts to kind of double clutch and then make a throw late. When quarterbacks make throws late, that's when they turn the football over. 13 interceptions this season, 4 interceptions in his last 2 games alone. So he wants to give the ball away. The Chargers need to encourage him to do so, and that's going to be a big way for them to win this football game on Sunday.
Well, and just to show you how dangerous the Buccaneers are, right? He's had 2 picks in each of the last 2 games, and they won both of those games.
Yeah.
I think it's nice that even in a loss last week, you saw Jesse Minter getting deep into his bag and confusing Patrick Mahomes and making him hold on to the football. And I think with Baker Mayfield, they could do that. Not only could it lead to some interceptions, it could lead to some fumbles, because he has 13 fumbles this year.
13
fumbles, 12 interceptions, 13 interceptions. I mean, that's 26 possible takeaways that you have right there. They didn't lose every fumble, but he's basically on average giving you 2 chances to take the football away from him per game. If the Chargers can do that and help their offense in a game where the offense might have to keep up a little bit, because this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense can score points, that is going to be absolutely huge. And I want to touch back on what James Yarko said on the crossover yesterday, because there's one thing he kept hammering throughout the show, which was just being able to run the ball. But for me, it's more of like in general, being able to slow down these running backs. With no Chris Godwin, obviously the guy that you want to pay attention to in that receiving core is Mike Evans. But this offense runs through their running backs. And just to give you an idea, I mean, this is an offense that's put up 420 plus yards in 3 straight games. But a lot of that has come from the running backs. The running backs for the Buccaneers over the last 3 games have, actually 4 games, have averaged 200 total yards, rushing yards and receiving yards per game. Their running backs are going for 200 yards per game over a 4-game stretch. The Chargers running backs have done that once as a unit this entire season. That's how dynamic those running backs are. And I think the thing that makes them really dangerous is not just their ability as runners, but their abilities catching the ball out of the backfield. Bucky Irving may not play in this game, hasn't practiced at all this week, tried to come back last week and had a very short outing before he had to leave the game. If he's out, that's huge, but they still have two very capable running backs from Rachaad White and Sean Tucker. So being able to slow down those backs, being able to not let them just totally get going, I think is a huge way to stop this potent offense.
I agree completely, and that was going to go in line with one of mine as well as the running backs in the passing game. And just to kind of illustrate how dynamic they have been and how big of a part of the offense they have been for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tampa Bay running backs catching the ball out of the backfield, the Bucs are second in the league in receptions by running backs, 85, first in receiving yards, 726, and tied for the league lead with 6 touchdowns. That is from ESPN. So it's a huge part of their offense. They definitely want to utilize those running backs however they can. And, by all accounts, they've been extremely productive. And obviously this key here is this is an every week thing, but you got to get pressure on Baker Mayfield. His passer rating when kept clean is 108.8, and he's completing over 72% of his passes. When he is under pressure, that passer rating goes to 62.3, and he's only completing 57.1% of his passes. Tristan Wirfs is fantastic. Tristan Wirfs is one of the best tackles in the National Football League, so it's going to be a little bit tough to get pressure on that side. But this offensive line has given up sacks. They've given up about 35 sacks so far this season. So when you get in his face, you get pressure on him, you make him double clutch, you make him have to go out there and do things out of structure of the play and get pressure on him, he really crumbles.
Yeah, he can't. And I think the thing is with him too is it's a little confusing because they do have a very good offensive line, right? And Baker will hold it at times, right? If you can make him pat that ball, it's because he's holding the football probably too long. And I think that's why, being able to slow down the running backs is so important, because you have to get yourself into those obvious passing situations to really unleash the full arsenal of your pass rush and have it be super effective. So I think it's encouraging that you saw the Chargers hold Isaiah Pacheco and also Kareem Hunt to less than 4.0 yards per carry last week. That's a huge, good sign in the right direction. Maybe getting a Denzel Perryman back in this game helps that a lot. I think the last thing I would touch on here is just the young corners continuing to have to step up, because they do get a different kind of challenge this week with Mike Evans. I'm excited to see how someone like Cam Hart matches up against him, a big dude on the outside to match up with one of the bigger, more physical, more imposing receivers in the entire NFL. And it does seem like Cam Hart, after kind of limited snaps last week, should be available off the injury report for a full load of snaps this week. And then, it also feels like a game that Tarheeb still could make an impact in and get a takeaway. And then I think for Christian Fulton, obviously he's not one of the rookies, but still a young player. And I think the biggest thing for him would just be like, don't get pass interference called against you, right?
Yeah.
Because, Christian Fulton, he's had some bad moments over the last couple games. He's been really, really solid overall. It's just hard to feel good about it when you're seeing those big pass interference calls in big moments. And someone like a Mike Evans is going to be able to draw those calls and go through you to go get the football. So I think those young corners stepping up against this potent passing attack is one of the biggest keys going into this one.
I agree. I think it's important that they keep it rolling. I mean, they're going to go up against a physical beast there with Mike Evans, but also I think the Chargers need to pay attention to Cade Otton as well, the tight end over the middle. He's a big security blanket for Baker Mayfield, and he is utilized quite a bit. So the linebackers and, obviously Derwin James needs to be ready for that matchup. Obviously, he did exceedingly well against Travis Kelce last week.
Absolutely, and it feels like it should be a big Deion Henley game, a game they're going to need Deion Henley not just against Cade Otton, but also against those running backs coming out of the backfield, and there maybe hasn't been a better linebacker to do that this entire season throughout the entire NFL. So Deion Henley has been a difference maker. We'll have more about him later, because obviously a bad moment last week, a great chance to have a bounce back game, and Athir definitely thinks he's going to have one. But let's talk about the Chargers offense, and I think for the Chargers offense, it's pretty clear what they have to start as far as where they start with the keys. And it starts with Vita, and it starts with Calijah Kancey, because the Bucs don't have a good defense, but where the Bucs are good defensively is where the Chargers are weak, and that's where it has to start. So we're getting into all the defensive keys and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about Prize Picks because Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks, one of my favorite parts about it, it's the best way to get action in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia as well. I'm going to go a little bit different with my Prize Picks projections that I'm using this week because they're not all out yet for the Chargers because Justin Herbert's injury, I'm sure, plays a factor in it. So they're not all out yet, but you can also go less than, right, on players you don't want to do well. So maybe Baker Mayfield more than or less than 236.5 passing yards, and Justin Herbert, since he's a little banged up, less than half a receiving or rushing touchdown. I think you hit both of those and you win. That's as simple as Prize Picks gets. And you can download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play that $5. And you don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. I also need to tell you guys about Omaha Steaks because nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite. And right now, you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off. Half off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. So not only getting half off, you're getting an extra $30 off with promo code NFL with 5 generations of experience that consistently deliver the world's best steak experience. And gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift. Thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites, and I've never sent Omaha Steaks to anyone who didn't like them. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. David, let's get to the Chargers offense here because the Chargers offense, it's kind of in a weird spot because we've known that they've had their struggles in the second half of last week. They flipped the switch. Everything was opposite day, as we had said, and they scored every possession that they had in the second half. So I think what you hope for in this game against an offense that can put up some points at the Buccaneers is obviously finding that consistency, getting off to a better start you got off to last week, but still being able to make those adjustments at halftime and being able to come out and put a complete game together. But that's not going to happen if you let Vita and Calijah Cancey just destroy your offensive game plan. And those guys, as a duo, have the propensity to do it and have the capability to do it. And like it's unreal what those dudes have been able to do in the middle, going up against what the Chargers maybe are weakest at offensively.
Yeah, those two guys, Vita and Calijah Cancey, have 12 sacks between them. 2 interior defensive linemen really getting after the passer and really doing a great job of affecting the ball game. Obviously, we've talked about it all year, all season long. We all know that one of the biggest weaknesses on this football team for the Chargers is the interior of their offensive line. I think Zion Johnson's played decently the last few weeks. I think Bradley Bozeman quietly has played pretty well. Trey Pipkins has had a lot of trouble. He's really, really struggled. And he's dealing with an injury this week, so we'll see if he's going to be up or down. That's definitely going to be something we have to keep an eye on. But whoever it is, whether it's Jamari Sawyer, whether it's Trey Pipkins, they need to make sure that their communication is on point, that they know exactly what their assignments are and where their help is so that they can do the best job they can to keep the monsters away from Justin Herbert.
Yeah, dude, Vita Vea, if you don't know what Vita Vea looks like, Google him. I mean, he's an absolute actual monster on the football field. And when you're talking about just Calijah Cancey and Vita Vea, what have they done for me lately? Well, all they've done is over the last 3 games created 30 pressures just between the two of them. They haven't had a single game in the last 3 games where they haven't combined for at least 9 pressures in a game. And then total, 10, 11, 9 over the last 3. That's terrifying, right? Because some of those interiors are better than what the Chargers interior is. And I think when you're talking about the Bucs overall, they have a defense that can be exposed. We talked about it yesterday. They're not a great sack percentage team, right? They're 20th in the league in sack percentage, but they're 10th in the league in sacks. And what does that mean? A ton of passing attempts against them because they get in these shootouts. They're getting in these high-scoring games. The teams average 38 pass attempts per game against the Buccaneers. You don't want Justin Herbert doing that. I think the other big thing is just the communication. This is a team that blitzes at the 5th highest percentage in the entire NFL. and Justin Herbert's probably not going to be as mobile as he usually is. If that interior offensive line can't give you something and they let the Bucs totally disrupt them, it's going to be a very long day for the Chargers offense. Where would you go next for your keys, Dave?
Yeah, so the next key I have is going to be with the running game. I think when you look at the second half success of the Chargers offense and their ability to move the ball down the field, it was helped in large part by the ability to run the ball and set up play action off of those rushing attempts, which we saw in the second half of that game. For the Buccaneers specifically, if you are able to run the ball, get over 100 yards rushing, there's a very good chance you're going to beat them. In their losses to the Broncos, Ravens, Falcons, and Chiefs, they gave up over 120 rushing yards to each of those opponents and obviously lost all of those games. So the more you can keep that high-powered offense and Baker Mayfield off the field, and you can stay on the field and sustain drives and sustain offense, which we know has been very difficult for the Chargers consistently throughout the ball game, they need to continue to start with the running game and continue with the running game to protect your quarterback by setting up your play action, by keeping possession of the ball. Running the ball in the manner that you want to is going to help you do what you want and what your identity is telling everybody that you want it to be.
Yeah, and I mean, just to piggyback off that, I mean, the Buccaneers rank 11th best as far as rushing yards per game allowed. So you'd think, hey, that's a pretty stout defensive front. We know that it is, at least with the players they have in there right now.
Yeah.
But it's because teams also aren't running the ball against them a lot. Kind of like the sacks and the, amount of pressures that they've been able to, come up with. They're tied for 9th worst as far as yards per carry allowed. You can run on them. We always bang on the Chargers' run defense. I mean, they're tied in the yards per attempt that they allowed. And we're talking about one defense that feels like they're a good run defense and one that we think has been a pretty poor run defense. That's a big deal. You know what I mean? So I think that's something right there where, hey, if you're able to give them something in the running game, right? Like, I'm not looking for fireworks even. Like, just give them something. Have it be an actual efficient part of your offense. You're going to have a great chance in this game. And when you look at what they've been able to do, man, like the running backs haven't been terrible over the last couple of games. They just haven't really pounded the rock as much.
Yeah.
They went 18 for 70, Gus Edwards and Kamani Vidal in one game. They went 10 for 52 in the other. That's 28 carries for 122 yards over the last two games. That's a 4.4 average. Sign me up for that right now for this game. If you gave me that, I would take it right away. So it's more about sustaining the drives, being able to get those rushing attempts up, because they've actually been able to do it. And at least it did seem like they were able to find some space last week against a better run defense than the Chiefs in that second half. So the last thing I'll touch on here, I do think it's a big game for the receivers to step up because it's a secondary that will allow it. But I want to touch on another thing that, got brought to my attention yesterday in the crossover, and that's just how bad the Buccaneers are against tight ends. So I'm looking for a big Stone Smart game. I love seeing his emergence last week.
Me too.
Will Dissly hasn't been able to participate so far in practice this week. 3 catches for 54 yards and also has a great matchup because Tampa Bay has been banged up defensively and tight ends have dominated them. Tight ends have averaged 70 yards per game against this Buccaneers defense.
Wow.
There's only 3 tight ends in the NFL that are averaging 70 yards per game, and it's George Kittle, Trey McBride, and Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
That means every tight end group that's playing the Buccaneers defense turns into Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, and George Kittle. That's what I'm saying here. So it does feel like an opportunity. Like with Will Dissly, he had his shortcomings as far as just athletically. He wasn't always going to be able to bring you some things. As a receiving option, Stone Smart should be able to get it done this week. And I think especially the thing that is the biggest feather in his cap is Greg Roman shouting out his ability in the run blocking department and in the blocking department. You want to run those big sets out there, at least Stone Smart gives you that actual receiving threat at tight end, and he's set up for a huge matchup this week if he can take advantage of it.
Yeah, obviously Stone Smart was another part of my keys just because it just makes too much sense.
We don't go over these beforehand, so we saw the same thing, right?
Yeah, we definitely do not. But Stone Smart, 3 catches in that game, 3 first downs also created off of those catches. Feel like he can attack the seam, he can attack the defense. And then one more I'll throw out there just really quickly is more physicality from Quentin Johnston. I think that was one of the best aspects. Continued physicality from Quentin Johnston. He was at his most physical against the Chiefs. I think that lends itself to his game, lets him get into the game, and also, that's when he's performed his best. So more of that, please. I think that's going to do good things for the Chargers offense.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, I think that's a great point, and his continued confidence is something that's going to be huge for this offense down the stretch. It's adding potentially Ladd McConkey, hopefully, if he can play. Been limited all week, was limited
Please,
all
that'd
last
be
week,
great.
so you can't really put too much into him being at practice all week this week, but it does feel like he has a chance to go this week. Adding him back into the mix against a secondary, that will allow some yards to wide receivers and tight ends. If you can add him in and still get that same level of effort from Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnson and similar production, you're talking about a potent passing attack all of a sudden. But we do have to get into our bold predictions, and Athir thinks that Deion Henley is in for a big game, and I think I tend to agree with him. So we're getting into our bold and our game predictions and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. You can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Right now, the lines are already out, right? We know what probably the final line for this game is going to be. And it's moved a little bit. The Chargers started off as 2.5-point favorites. They're now 3-point favorites. And that is kind of with the impending kind of limitations that Justin Herbert has. I think it's going to be a close game. The over-under is currently set at 45.5 points. That seems about right. So if you want to play any bets on this game, you can use that $5 and potentially get the $150 in bonus bets if you win. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you can get started with that $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. David, it's time to get bold here and get into our predictions, and thank you to all the everydayers that hit us up on Twitter at LockedOnLAC or call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 as we lead into this gigantic matchup. And we also appreciate you guys making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the slate at Locked On NFL, where they have 2 shows a day in the morning with my man Tyler, the Madman Roland, and Tony Wiggins later on, as they both bring on the guests that cover their show, cover their team every single day, because you don't get that in a lot of places on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. But David, let's get with Athir here, because Athir has a bold prediction about Deion Henley. And it's so crazy because it's Athir, but maybe doable.
Daniel, David, Athir bold prediction Sunday. The Rangers, Deion Henley coming out party. I'm going with 16 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. Let's go. Chargers win 27-13.
Oh, I mean, I love anything Deion Henley related, especially because you see last week, right? The highest graded defensive player for the Chargers, but has the biggest bad moment in the game by any Chargers defender, missing that hit on Patrick Mahomes. And I love Jesse Minter coming out and just being like, hey, he made the right play. He made a decision. He went for it. And it's a play he wants back. But like, if that's what you're telling me, I have Deion Henley, one of my best defenders, going up in that situation, I'm going to take that every time. But it wouldn't be an Athir Bowl prediction unless he's going with something that hasn't happened yet, which is 16 tackles. He's had 15 in a game. He's had 14 in a game. Hasn't got to 16, but it doesn't seem crazy against a team with the Buccaneers who run the football a lot. And I'd say the other thing is no forced fumble, right? I might change the forced fumble to an interception, because it does feel like he's been sniffing it, right? He's been really close to a couple interceptions. So Athir, I'll trade you that forced fumble. 2 sacks I like, because he's been getting a lot of pressure, but I'll change that to an interception maybe for Deion Henley, because it does feel like he's going to get one of these days.
Well, we were talking before the show is I don't necessarily know if I want to see Deion Henley get 16 tackles, because that means the defense is on the field.
They're running the football a lot
in this game, and I don't necessarily want that. But is this a stat line that I think that Deion Henley can achieve? Yeah, I mean, I think Deion Henley can definitely do that. I mean, he's a guy that's always around the football, and he's been getting close. Like you said, I don't like the forced fumbles. He's a good tackler. He's a sound tackler. He doesn't really bring the power. If we're talking about a Denzel Perriman here, then yeah, I can believe it, because Denzel Perriman has real stopping power. When he hits people, they go to the ground, and it's over.
Yeah, no, 100%. And hopefully we'll see him back there, because especially in those short yardage situations, that's been killing the Chargers over the past few games without him. He's and so that good. Is somewhere where he's an absolute specialist. And I mean, with the emergence of Troy Dye, you get that trio back out there for certain situations. I think you're kind of peaking in that linebacker room right now. Let's go to the next one here from Chris Saiz, who says Darius Davis gets a kick or a punt return touchdown and also gets one on offense. David, what do you think?
I love it. I think they need to, utilize all the weapons that they have on offense, especially with J.K. Dobbins still missing time, with the uncertainty with Ladd McConkey, obviously with Justin Herbert dealing with his injuries. They need all their dynamic weapons to be able to contribute on offense, and I believe Darius Davis is that. And I also feel like he's been getting close on special teams.
Yeah, talking about getting close.
He's been getting really close, and for him, it's really just one block. You get him one more block, and he can take it the distance. He has already shown that. And he's given us good returns, but it's just that one little push, and he can take it all the way to the house.
And we've seen a little bit of uptick in how he's been used offensively. He's been getting more snaps on offense. You wonder, because a lot of that was last week, if Ladd McConkey takes away from some of that just because they're both playing the slot so much. But Darius Davis quietly having another all-pro return season. Like, he hasn't had that big one that's caught the headlines, but like, so far out of anyone with 10 returns, he's third in punt return average and sixth in kick return average. He's actually been a better kickoff, returner this year than he was last year. So he's been awesome. It does feel like he could take one back to the house, and that would be huge in a game that we're hoping doesn't turn into a shootout, but definitely has that as a possibility. But let's get to this one here from Jason Sprinkle Sr., who says, running game goes over 100 between all the running backs, not counting Justin Herbert's yards. You asked for bold, so enjoy that. First of all, it seemed wild when I read it because it's like, that doesn't seem like that crazy of a thing. And it's like, before the Chargers, unfortunately, that's what it's become. It's become a bold prediction for the running backs to get over 100 yards. And the Chargers haven't reached 100 yards just rushing in general, even with Justin Herbert's yards in 3 weeks. 3 weeks under 100. The week before that, they had 155, but 65 of those came from Justin Herbert. So it's been 4 weeks since the running backs have gone over 100. It hasn't happened many times this year, and it hasn't happened, obviously, without J.K. Dobbins. I hope it happens. It would be a huge, huge boost for the Chargers offense if they can get something. Hey, I said, give me something, 100 yards. I would take that right now.
Yeah, let's attack the perimeters of the defense there. I don't think
with
we're
the Darius Davis, right?
Yeah.
If you have a Vita in the middle, why not give Darius Davis some chances on the outside? Going back to that.
Yeah, let's not beat your heads against the wall and try to run up the middle against two of the more impactful defensive linemen in the league. Let's attack the perimeters. Let's get our offensive linemen going, moving forward. Utilize the weapon that is Rashawn Slater on the left side. I mean, my gosh, he's just been unbelievably good this year in the pass blocking game and in the run blocking game. Let's continue to utilize that weapon.
Absolutely. And let's get to one more here. And this one, I'll say, I don't think it's going to happen. But I would say if it does happen, give me a guaranteed Chargers victory. And it's from Brandon Sendown, who says, bold prediction, the offensive line will have their best performance of the year and Justin Herbert won't get sacked. That's only happened once this year, David. That Justin Herbert has gone through a game with 0 sacks, and it was against the Tennessee Titans and probably one of their more complete games offensively. I think he only threw the ball 18 times, which is probably a big part of why he wasn't sacked. But that was a Jeffrey Simmons game, right, where we just assumed Jeffrey Simmons is just going to dominate and could derail. A lot of similarities here. If they could do it, they win this game for sure.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. Now, I just don't know if that's going to be a possibility.
I don't know if
here.
it's possible.
No.
No.
I don't, just because obviously Justin Herbert's a little bit hampered. He's not going to be able to move around in the pocket and escape and run as much as and as well as we know he is capable of. But I'd love to see it. I truly would. And I'm with you. If there's some way that they are able to prevent the Buccaneers from getting at Justin Herbert at all, it's a guaranteed W.
Yeah, I mean, if you even told me like they get 1 sack, I'd say the Chargers probably have a 90% chance to win this game. Just because I think if you give Justin Herbert potentially his full set of receiving weapons, potentially a game where he has plenty of time to throw, that's a win almost every single time with Justin Herbert as quarterback. But let's get to our bold predictions, David. What are you going with your bold prediction this week?
Stone Smart breakout game, baby.
There you go.
6 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown.
I love that. I mean, it definitely, he was my backup bold prediction just in case you ended up going with who I ended up going with, which is Justin Herbert. It's hard to pick him as a key, but it does feel like he could have a flu game type of performance in this one because of the defense that he's going up against. If they give him any time, he should be able to totally shred this Buccaneers defense and put up some points. So the Buccaneers have allowed the 3rd most passing yards in the NFL this year. They also have probably their 4 best receiving options out there if you count Stone Smart, because he's probably a little bit better at receiving than Will Dissly is.
Yeah.
Love to see Stone Smart get a couple of those screen passes that Will Dissly was getting for a while too.
That
would be especially if you're going up against a team that blitzes a ton and has monsters in the middle you're trying to avoid. Make Vita chase some screen passes make Vita Vea chase a Darius Davis
Yeah, let's
around.
test that gas tank.
Maybe that's the one. You can't fight him with size. Fight him with just the smallest, fastest guy that
Wear
you
him
have.
down.
But I have Justin Herbert, 350 yards, 3 touchdowns in this game.
I love that.
I would love to see it. If they do it, they win. Let's get to our game predictions, though, David. We said FanDuel has this as a 3-point Chargers favor going into it. Do you think that they can get a huge critical victory and pretty much put their magic number at 1 with 3 games left to play?
Yeah, I think in this game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are absolutely just completely destroyed with injuries. They have 19 people on their injury report, which is crazy. And obviously, some of those guys are going to play for sure, but there's a good chance that, one or two important pieces might not be out there. And I think Bucky Irving is probably going to be one of those guys that misses. I think that's going to be very impactful for the Bucs. It's going to be a lot more difficult for them to move the ball against the Chargers in that respect. I think the Chargers defense is going to be able to bottle up Baker Mayfield, and I think the offense is going to be able to do enough. I got the Chargers winning 24-17.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that logic. At a certain point, even if guys can play, that you feel like it has to take an effect when you have 19 guys in the injury report, as the Chargers have known so many times. And although the Chargers have some big names on there that might not play, it feels like there's a good chance that Ladd McConkey plays. We know Justin Herbert's going to be out there. I'd be 100% stunned and shocked if you were to miss this game. It's just what version of him you're going to get and what percentage you're going to get. I have the Chargers winning this one partially in part because you don't often find teams that have injury reports twice as long as the Chargers do. And I think that even a good offense, Jesse Minter will be able to do enough defensively to slow them down. I have the Chargers 27, Buccaneers 23. I think it comes down to the Chargers picking off Baker Mayfield as they try to drive for the go-ahead touchdown late in the game. That's how I see this one playing out. I think the Chargers can get to 9-5, which would just be gigantic, and also show us you can perform against a good offense. Show us you can perform against a good team, because the Buccaneers are a good team. The Chargers could lose this game. They need to stick to the game plan. They need to get a lot of these things done, because if not, that's a team that can put up 30 on you in a blink of an eye. Truly, that's what it is. The Chargers have to show up for this one. If the Chargers don't show up, they could get dog walked. But this team under Jim Harbaugh hasn't had, I don't think, a single game where it just feels like the entire team didn't show up. You feel like they're going to be prepared. Jesse Minter said, you don't want to say anything too crazy, but it feels like it's been a good week. One of those weeks where we might go out there, like he said, it was kind of like what happened with the Falcons. They went out on 4 interceptions. So I'm going to take his word for it. I think the Chargers defense will
sweep
do
that
enough
division,
in this one.
baby.
And go sweep the NFC South like you should. But make sure you guys are back here on Sunday night when we do our live show, and you can make sure you don't miss it by subscribing or following for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel. And you can also find the show on wherever you get your podcast from as well. You can also find every day on our social media. We put the show out on Twitter at Locked On LAC, on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. You can also find it on my Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David's at Dro Talk SD. Ready for a live victory post-game show. Go get it done. The Chargers have won these games all year. You're going up against a good team. Go get that big win so we can be here celebrating on Sunday night. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.